following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to Gate City Chronicles. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and today I am proud to have Joy Barrett on my show.
Thank you.
And Joy, you are with the Granite State Children's Alliance. I actually wrote it down this time because I always forget.
That's perfect. You always want to get it right, right?
That's right.
That's perfect.
So the Granite State Children's Alliance, what is the Granite State Children's Alliance?
Well, the Granite State Children's Alliance
is... You're the executive director,
I'm the executive director. We are the chapter organization for all of the Child Advocacy Centers in New Hampshire, in which there is one in each county. Mm-hmm. And actually in Hillsborough County, there are two, because of course our largest cities.
Right.
We have one in Nashua and one in Manchester.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Child Advocacy Centers.
No, off air I was mentioning something about guardian ad litems and
sure.
how, but this is not anything like that.
No, this is not it. We, matter of fact, I should also let you know and the viewers know that I'm the new executive director,
right.
And Christy Palestina was the executive director before me, and she has moved up to the National Children's Alliance. And I find myself having such a great privilege, to certainly be with this organization. And I'm still getting my sea legs quite a bit, but my respect for the organization, has grown by leaps and bounds.
Is your symbol with a bunch of colors and...
Hands. If you've ever seen, we have children's hands kind of symbolizing kind of who we are, what we do, and certainly why it matters.
And you were very involved with another organization just before this, too.
Yeah, prior to joining the Granite State Children's Alliance, I was the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Nashua and Greater Salem,
wow.
Where I was fortunate to lead a great team and provide a lot of support to kids. So when this opportunity came to me, I felt really very fortunate to continue to be advocating for children. And as I said earlier, my respect for what the team does on a regular basis really has grown by leaps and bounds. The Child Advocacy Centers, just to give you a little bit of perspective mm-hmm. of what we do, we provide the forensic interviews for child abuse cases.
That sounds very technical.
It is fairly technical. Our referrals come from law enforcement as well as from DCYF. And imagine in years past, if there was suspected abuse, a child might be interviewed in the back of a police car or in a police station or some other place that just wasn't friendly. It was intimidating. And of course,
on top of all the confusion that you've just gone through.
Exactly. Well, and horror, mm-hmm. quite honestly, horror.
Horror, shame, fear.
All of the above. And so Child Advocacy Centers began a movement to really create very friendly places where children could be interviewed. But even better than that they would have to only recount their stories once or a very limited amount of times, because there was a multidisciplinary team around the table who was actually watching or witnessing that interview. Mm-hmm. So rather than being interviewed countless times about the abuse, which in fact then has them reliving the horror, we have a multidisciplinary team which involves law enforcement, DCYF, family advocate, county attorney office, all around the table that are listening to the interview on a closed circuit television.
Right, they're not in the room with the...
They're not in the room. The child is with one of our staff at the Child Advocacy Center, mm-hmm. and they're being interviewed, and they are... the interviewer has an earpiece, so if there's any questions that need to be presented to the child, that certainly is done through the earpiece, and then the interviewer can certainly rephrase that in a more child-friendly way or developmentally way, mm-hmm. To be able to help get those answers made. And when I first started, again, this is kind of my 90th day on the job. And when I first started, I asked to see an interview because I thought it was very important in the work that I was going to be doing to really provide awareness to this organization and really strengthen it throughout the state of New Hampshire with all our member organizations and even our own advocacy centers. It was really important for me to see an interview, and the work that our team does collectively to ensure that the child is well cared for, is in a very safe, calming place. You can't even describe it. And the relief that the child has once they're done with that interview, that now they can move on with their lives and heal, is really pretty remarkable.
How quick do you get to respond to something to that effect? I mean, obviously law enforcement says, look, we have a situation. Could it have been a long, ongoing situation, or just how do you work that out?
We receive the referral as soon as it comes in as a referral to them, and when it's in that part of the process for that investigation. And so we react very quickly to the needs of law enforcement and certainly DCYF to be able to provide that meaningful work so that they can, in fact, investigate the case.
Right.
So we react very quickly, which is difficult to do at times simply because of the volume that comes in. The Granite State Children's Alliance operates...
The volume?
The volume. We see, throughout the state of New Hampshire, we see about 2,000 cases a year, and that is statistically 1 in 10 children come forward. So that's only 1/10.
Out of the 1 in 10, how many are founded?
Well, the prosecution rates are higher with CACs simply because of the fact that the process is just so collaborative, and the information that we're gathering is just very meaningful. But you know, certainly 1 child is way too many to be seen in a CAC.
Sure, and I guess that's my point. When you're processing, obviously they're not 100% of the children are usually, you know, injured, but for those that are, obviously they have to be taken care of immediately. There's got to be, once you find it, what is the process for the child after? I mean, do you...
Well, that's the navigating part of the process that is...
That's larger than life for them.
You're not ever finished with this particular situation, and that's where family advocacy work and case management is so important. We're very fortunate in Nashua to have Bridges. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bridges.
Familiar, yeah.
We have Bridges, and they provide a family advocate that comes to the CAC to provide those types of services for families and children that come into the center for their forensic interview and help them navigate through what you can imagine is a very difficult time moving forward with what's happening, possibly legally, you know, all different pieces from mental health, all different social networks that need to really be kind of brought into the picture. And, you know, I've been really looking at the work that I'm doing currently with the lens as a parent. You know, I have 3 children of my own, and, you know, how your family is in crisis, your child is enduring the unspeakable, and how you're able to then navigate and protect them moving forward, but navigate through the system is pretty overwhelming. So the support that we're able to have with great partnerships. In some of our child advocacy centers, we call them CACs. It's the world of acronyms, certainly, but in some of our CACs, we actually provide that family support directly in-house. Again, in Nashua, we're just very fortunate to have Bridges to be our partner of ours.
When a child has been determined, okay, something really happened here, do they prosecute the perp?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And you know, again, I think that is, you know, people often say to me, you know, how do you do this work? Or, you know, how are you finding this work? Of course, being new.
What a roller coaster of emotions, though, for you.
Well,
people there. I mean, you get the anger part, you've got the sorrow part, you've got the delicate part. It's got to be so multi-layered.
Well, certainly I am not on the ground like some of our staff are. Our forensic interviewers, again, my hat goes off to them in that they're really on the ground working with the children on a daily basis, hearing multiple interviews, possibly in a day, and the amount of attention and care and consistency and professionalism that they display is pretty remarkable. But if you were to ever come to our office, you would see that the sentiment isn't that of depression and despair, that it is a very inspired group that know that they're doing their best to protect children. Because one of the things that, and this is an interesting point for you to know, is on top of the fact that we're able to provide the forensic interview for these particular cases, we also do a lot of community outreach and education. So in one hand, we're empowering a child to recount their story of what has happened, but on the other side, we're also out in the community educating adults on how to keep kids safe and what are the signs of abuse, so that we can really put ourselves out of business. Because again, one child coming into a CAC is far too many. So we do a lot on the prevention side, as well as the side that we're on with obviously participating in those investigations.
You said there are 2,000 children.
2,000 children are seen in New Hampshire a year in CACs. And again, the Granite State Children's Alliance is the chapter organization. So although we operate 4 CACs, 2 of them are in Hillsborough County, as I mentioned. There's Nashua and, of course, Manchester. We have one in Cheshire County, which is our Keene Child Advocacy Center. And then we have one in Belknap County, which is in Laconia. So those are operated by Granite State Children's Alliance. But there is one in every county in New Hampshire, and those are member organizations to the Granite State Children's Alliance. So together, we're kind of a partnership together. And so collectively, throughout all of the CACs in New Hampshire, there are 200 children that are seen in CACs each year. As a matter of fact, I just did a presentation to a group, and in 2013, it was 1,957 cases that were before us. And again, what's staggering for me is I'm starting to learn some of the statistics, both regionally, statewide, and certainly nationally, is that only 1 in 10 tend to be seen, which to me provides an amazing awareness of there are 90% of those kids that are just suffering in silence. And so again, our prevention piece for people to recognize abuse and to do something about it and be vigilant about it is really very important.
And if unchecked, then the children go through life with all kinds of emotional trauma, and it comes out in different ways, whether it's drug abuse, it's anything and it's not positive.
Yeah, children are our greatest asset, and certainly protecting them is what we need to do. But you're absolutely right. Those who have been affected by abuse, both physical, sexual abuse, who suffer in silence, are more likely to have other things down the road as attributing factors to their well-being.
They'll carry it into their adult life, and it's a crime that should really carry a heavy weight of punishment, in my view, and because you're ruining somebody potentially for the rest of their life, and they're going to carry that burden unless they can find a certain peace, acceptance, and forgiveness, or whatever emotions that they have to go through in order to process the abuse that they've suffered as a child. If not handled properly, you've not only created a burden on one individual's soul, but that soul will also go and affect others in a negative way. Whether it be with their children or in the community. And it's only because they're expressing the pain that they have, and they have not dealt with it properly. So those that do that crime should not be let out. I have a very bad feeling for them, and they should be heavily prosecuted, because it's something that just doesn't go away.
Right, well, absolutely, and that's why when you were asking about after the interview, what are some of the what are some of the supports that are for children and families, that is so important, that beyond, beyond the abuse, beyond the interview, beyond the disclosure, there needs to be a healing period. We often kind of phrase our organization into that there's justice, there's healing, and then there's hope. Because when that healing process, children will be able to grow up. And I think what I have found, again, in the time that I've been with the Granite State Children's Alliance, that what impacts me the most is how resilient children are. And again, watching that one interview on my first week with the organization, that was a feeling that immediately took me over, was how resilient this child was after having disclosed something that was so horrible, so horrific, and now able to put that behind her. So there's a positive. We even have a campaign called Beat the Odds, which is our education and awareness campaign, where we, educate, again, adults to look for signs of abuse or to prevent abuse.
Right.
And those would be your teachers, your coaches, caregivers. We had a discussion before. You were talking about child care workers. Those in children's lives are really held responsible for keeping them safe.
Right.
And so Beat the Odds is a great campaign that is kind of is a positive aspect to what we can do really as a call of action to get people involved in our community to really make a difference in the lives of children.
Yeah. Now, are you a nonprofit organization, or are you funded by the state, or are you partially a quasi? How does this work?
We are a nonprofit organization, so a 501c3, and our funding is diversified. Although I will tell you that there really isn't enough funds for the work that we do. We have.
Is there ever enough funds?
Is there ever enough?
Yeah.
Well, but when we're talking about victims of crime and there being children, the fundraising that we have to do to be able to afford the staff and the professional services to provide for kids.
Do you get a block grant or anything from the state or anything like that? We
get some federal funding. We get some state funding. Our Attorney General office provides us some funding, and that is a certain percentage, but about 49% of our revenue comes from fundraising events. We have one event that is this April, April 11th. It's a gala that we raise a substantial amount of money for the work that we do, and I am forever grateful for those who really help us, coordinate that event and put that on. But as an executive director, leading an organization that provides such critical services and our mission and how we work in a multidisciplinary team for victims of abuse, we shouldn't have to be fundraising 49% of our budget to get the job done. We apply for certainly foundation grants, municipal funding, but there's so much more that we need to do. And
it's really important to understand whether it's abuses comes in different styles, and obviously this is more of the physical, but the mental abuse, the parental alienation abuses, all abuses of some sort with children, they cost society. Not the children, but the result of the abuse. They grow up into adults, and if this isn't properly dealt with, then the crime rate is increased because they act out. If they feel as though they've been left behind, then they're going to act in a certain way. If it's unchecked, pain has a weird way of coming out, and it inflicts more pain. And society, when just on parental alienation studies, murders, suicides, drug abuse, a lot of different things happen because this child was either taken away from one parent or abused by another parent or sexually abused by an uncle or an aunt or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Who knows? It takes on a thousand different masks. And if municipalities want to invest in their kids, this is a good idea to take, I don't know, not a leap of faith, but to be proactive is, I guess, what I'm trying to get at in making sure that your community is well.
Sure. Well, even at Big Brothers Big Sisters, clearly a fabulous prevention program, mentoring program where you match littles with bigs, children who really need another caring adult in their life. Investing in children early makes a remarkable difference in communities later on. They grow up to be productive, giving back, wonderful citizens of communities. And, the same for the Granite State Children's Alliance is the work that we're doing, on one hand, certainly is part of a very critical component. These are child victims of crimes.
Right.
And then from our Beat the Odds, again, empowering people to get involved to prevent child abuse. To your point, if we have 90% that aren't disclosing, those 90% are then growing up in very unfavorable circumstances. And some of the things that you've identified are those circumstances are leading them down a path to where they could find themselves with a variety of different challenges as adults.
And that costs society.
And that costs. So, investing early in those measures, and there's a lot of great organizations in certainly the Nashua community alone, but in the state of New Hampshire. But, investing in children mission is
Nashua's
really
great.
is. Nashua has a great
everything. Everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, there's an organization helping somebody.
Yeah, and what's really nice about Nashua, I'm seeing it both at the Granite State Children's Alliance, and I saw it certainly at Big Brothers Big Sisters, is there's a really wonderful network of, we play together really well.
Yeah.
And when I go to conferences in other states, you don't necessarily see that type of collaboration and coalition feeling as you feel in New Hampshire, certainly, but even specifically in Nashua. Again, I speak so highly of Bridges because of the supports they provide. Our families that come into our centers, they're a partner of ours. They're a very critical piece to the work that's being done.
And you're
they're
familiar
here
with the
in our
front door.
community, and I'm familiar with the front door.
It's funny, and they're not in competition with each other. They're all, like you said, they're working in collaboration, and it's a neat thing because if somebody falls through the crack here, well, maybe there's an opportunity over here, or maybe there's in everywhere you look. It seems as though Nashua is creating a ton of safety nets for people, but yet I still hear the cry. We're underfunded.
Right.
We're turning away 80%, or there's a 90% here. It's overwhelming how the soup kitchen. Within the last 6 years, it's like just. I'm glad they got a new new location, but the needs are constantly growing.
Yeah, the needs are there, and I've had this conversation with many people about funding and about support because I think we're all struggling with that, and. What's interesting is our structure is really strong, meaning we have the right services in place, but they're so underfunded that it's difficult for us to really provide the services that really need to be out there to eradicate or remove some of the situations that are in place. And if we could only invest so heavily in this fabric, and especially as we're talking about children, if only we could invest to our fullest. I know that if we were to look out, 10 years, 8 years, that you would see a measurable change in the need to be able to react to some of those situations as people get to adulthood.
And the problem is that people don't realize that abuse does go on, and the homes could look beautiful. They could look ugly. They could. It's
all economic, backgrounds. It is. It's both political parties.
Oh.
It's
there's only
a very. Well, I guess I should say many. It transcends. It's not. It doesn't.
Politics,
it doesn't. Abuse doesn't discriminate, and. Again, I just feel it's a privilege to be. Working on behalf of kids and, hoping to make a measurable difference.
What do you have for staff?
For staff, we have 8 people that work in 3 counties. So again, I would cheerlead for the fact that, certainly I would love more funding to be able to have more staff. Our staff works incredibly hard, but we are only 8 deep, working extremely hard at really moving that needle, both in being able to react to the work that comes our way, but also provide that prevention piece.
How are you looking to grow? I mean, how many more staff or building? What?
Well, not necessarily building. I'd like to, I mean, some of my future goals are to create a model CAC where there are services that, again, we talked about kind of navigating the system after. My lens as a parent, how would you navigate? Some services that would be able to be provided right in a child advocacy center, from mental health counseling, medical examinations that could be done in a CAC. Again, bringing those partners in, not necessarily having them on board as staff, but having rooms available where that work can be done in a CAC. So that's kind of a vision that I have.
Do you work at all with any of the local faiths, the synagogues, the churches, or anything like that? Do they provide any reinforcement support for you at all?
Financial support or
you know,
reinforcement?
Just providing services.
Not that I'm aware of. You know, again, 90 days in, I'm getting to know a lot of my constituencies, and certainly a lot of our partners. It just seems like that could be tapped a little bit, you know. And I know there's the separation of church and state and all that kind of stuff, but they are part of the community too. And sure.
You know, they reach out, and there are a lot of philanthropists, if you will, that can help out in that way, and people that care. Tend to go to those.
Well, and I found that, again, I've been visiting a lot of people, meeting a lot of people, certainly not only the staff that we have, but the other CACs in the state of New Hampshire, and I have an incredible board. So I've been meeting certainly a lot of people, and everybody wants to help.
Nobody wants to see them left behind or hurt.
Everybody wants to help children, although it's a difficult subject matter sometimes. Again, I think that's how you approach it. Again, I find the work that we do empowering children, empowering families. It is inspirational, and so those conversations with people to get involved and to want to support the work that we're doing and want to talk about it is really important. Because you can sweep things under the rug, but the problem doesn't go away.
No.
And so, addressing it and joining us certainly
and healing it.
And healing. Yeah. Let's as I say, I'd love to put us out of business.
Yeah.
Because
again, of your own success, right?
Wouldn't that be terrific? That because one child is way too many.
How do people get in touch with you?
Well, they can certainly call us, or me at the office. I have an office here in Nashville, though I do a lot of traveling throughout New Hampshire, and that's 889-0321. Or certainly if you go on our website, that's CAC-New Hampshire NH, CAC-NH.org.
Wish we had more time, but I have to say goodbye for now.
I know. Sorry. Very nice meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles. We hope this interview helps you. And if you know a child that's in need, please speak up. Thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles, and we want to thank our sponsor, Aardvark, the Dean of Clean. You can reach them at 603-521-7657. If you need your carpets cleaned, call Aardvarks.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.